Nigeria, where a Nigerian court has released nearly 500 Boko Haram suspects for lack of evidence. The suspects will be rehabilitated before joining their families. Some of them have been held without trial since 2010. Nigeria is currently carrying out one of the biggest legal investigations into the militant Islamist insurgency. The court handed a second 15-year jail sentence to Haruna Yahaya, the first person convicted for his role in the 2014 kidnapping of schoolgirls from the town of Chibok. Yahaya was also sentenced to 15 years imprisonment last week. Both jail terms will run back-to-back according to the Justice Ministry. The trials are the latest in a string of mass hearings which began in October. Well, the freed Boko Haram suspects were accused of either belonging to the terrorist organization or of concealing information about the group. However, their detention without trial has elicited mixed reactions in the country.
But if they are not caught, they are just mere suspects. Just see them by the roadside and you arrested them to be Boko Haram. It's unfair.
Like the mass trial, I for one, I'm afraid because I lose confidence in the judiciary.
There have been flaws in our security system. The police don't have the way without. Look at those that have been taken to court, for instance. There are not enough evidences. Police arrest before they begin to get evidence. They take you to court when we're not having sufficiency of evidence and make a mockery of our judicial system.
Let's get more details now and insights on these developments from CGTN's Deji Badmus is joining me live from Lagos. Deji, Boko Haram has caused terror, particularly northeastern Nigeria, for a while now. So how exactly is the release of the more than 400 suspects being viewed by the public there?
Well, to be candid, Beatrice, there are concerns, as we have seen in previous releases. This one is also generating concerns among some people in the public because, well, people are scared. Some people, I should say, are scared that, these people that have been released, if proper vetting had actually been done, even though they have been released by the courts, if people are scared, if some of these people may not find their way back to Boko Haram. But generally, you just cannot continue to keep these people in detention for forever, so to speak. I mean, some of them have been in detention since 2012, some 2014. So it's a very long time. And unfortunately, if since the government has not been able to gather enough evidence to convict them, it just makes sense to let them go. Besides, keeping them in detention too is costing the government a lot. So it's not the first time, of course, members of, or suspected members, I should say, of Boko Haram would be released. And there are always concerns, but there's just nothing you can do when there isn't sufficient evidence now to prosecute or even secure conviction. Beatrice?
Well, so what exactly does the rehabilitation process entail, though? Is there confidence that it is sufficient to convert those who may have been part of Boko Haram or radicalized during their protracted incarceration?
Well, there's no question that that's a challenge. For instance, what we know is going to happen to these over 400 that have been released now. The judge said they will be released to their various state governments because they all come from different states. And so their state governments now will take responsibility for their rehabilitation. We don't know the kind of rehabilitation they went through when they were in detention, but we understand some of them were actually worked on. So it's now up to their various state governments now to carry out perhaps intensive rehabilitation program and then reintegrate them back into society. Now, how effective that will be, we do not know. And whether these state governments actually have a proper rehabilitation and reintegration plan in place, we do not know for sure. But it's up to the state governments now to execute the rehabilitation and reintegration program. So to speak, this is off the hands of the federal government because all this while that they had been in detention, they were in the custody of the federal government. Now their state governments will be taking over. Everybody just has to hope for the best, that the state governments have adequate plans in place to carry out proper rehabilitation and reintegration program on these individuals now who are being handed over to their state governments.
Well, Deji, there are also reports that authorities have issued a new bounty for Boko Haram's leader, Abubakar Shekau. What's the latest on this, and why now exactly, considering that the United States had previously also set a $7 million bounty for Shekau?
In fact, apart from the bounty that the United States placed on Shekau, the Nigerian government in the past also placed a bounty on him. I think somewhere in the region of what the military has now, placed on him. Well, what I am gathering is that probably the military has a new information now on Abubakar Shekau. The last video, for instance, he released, he obviously stated that he was getting fed up with the whole, with continuing the fight. And, over the past few weeks, some top Boko Haram commanders, very top Boko Haram commanders, were captured. So we do not know what information the military has. The military is not disclosing that, but this is the first time that the military on its own will be announcing, a bounty now on Abubakar Shekau. But altogether, this only increases the bounty on him. I mean, you have $7 million, for instance, from the United States government. I know the Nigerian government also placed a bounty of around 3 million naira on him some time ago, and now the military has placed a bounty of another 3. So it only increases the bounty on him, and I think the whole strategy is to encourage people who may have information on his whereabouts to come out and volunteer this information. But we just have to wait and see what happens eventually. But there's no question at all that it's my own suspicion that the military has a new information on Abubakar Shekau that it doesn't want to release, and believes this new bounty it's placing on him now might just go a long way in convincing some of those who might have those information now to come forward and disclose.
All right, Deji Badmus joining us there with that very latest from Lagos in Nigeria.